Hi, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mike Harris. I'm a software expert here at Infusionsoft, and today I'm going to take you through this basic training webinar, which focuses on automating your tasks. But before we get too far into anything, I always want to call attention to our Help Center. This is where you can find answers to a lot of the questions that you have every day dealing with Infusionsoft without having to necessarily call or chat into support. You get access to our user guide. You can find contact information for our support department. We have a large video library with lots of walkthroughs of how to accomplish certain things, and access to a lot more self-help learning. So what we'll be learning today is we're going to go through creating a workflow automation campaign. We will include an internal web form. We'll have that web form create tasks for us to complete, and then I'll show you where you can go to check those tasks on your dashboard or in My Day. But before we get too far into anything else, figure out what your workflow looks like. It's always best to imagine what the workflow is or draw it out before we actually start building anything inside of Infusionsoft. Questions you can ask yourself are, where do my leads come in from? How do they come in? Are they filling out a web form? Are they handing me a business card? Are you adding them manually? What do you do after you've collected those contacts? Do you send them an email? Do you mail them a product? Do you give them a phone call? What's the end goal? What are we actually reaching for? Here are some scenarios that kind of address some of those bullet points. So the first one says, someone calls in and I want to send information to them in a sequential order. So somebody calls in, I fill out a form, and I want them to receive emails in a very specific order and timed very precisely. Or someone walks into my gym, and I want to thank them for visiting and send them out information. So there's different information that needs to be collected there and information that I would like to send out. And then the very last one says, I got a call in, I need to send the new lead an ebook or a free CD. How can I remember all this and still get everything else done? I'm just one person. So this is a pretty familiar feeling for a lot of small business owners where they wear all the hats, where you're a one or two person shop and it's on you to remember everything. And sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything that needs to be done. So we're going to take a look at how Infusionsoft can help you in scenarios like this and others. So like I mentioned earlier, it's always great to start off visualizing your process. Start with a workflow. Start with a kind of a mind map, chart that just has one piece of your workflow flow into another one. This may be the very first time that you've written out a workflow from start to finish, whether it's on post-it notes or papers on the floor or note cards. It doesn't matter. But the better and more specific it is, the better you can visualize it and create it, the easier it is to create it inside of Infusionsoft. So I've logged into Infusionsoft and I'm on my dashboard here. I have a couple widgets here that pertain to sales and emails, but what I really want to focus on is tasks. And we have a widget that can help you do this. So what I'll do is I'll click on this Add Widgets button, and it takes me to the list of available widgets I can add to my dashboard. And the one I want, I'll just scroll down. Once I find tasks here, I'm going to go ahead and click on Add to Dashboard. Now what this does is automatically defaults to today or past due tasks that are assigned to me as the user. There's no option here to view anybody else's tasks on your dashboard. This is just focused on you. So this is where I can check this box to complete the task. I can check which tasks I would like to say that I'm done with. And then I hit this complete box and it marks that task as complete with today's date. We're going to look at My Day as well. So I hovered over the house icon and I scrolled down here to My Day. This is another place where we can see tasks. Now I have a couple here already in opportunities and tasks, no appointments, but we're going to fill this out or at least put something here with the campaign that we're going to create. But depending on what how your day goes, what kind of function or role you play in the company, One of these views may be better for another. The dashboard is typically for leadership, managers, people who need to keep a broader perspective. And my day is for people who kind of live and die by the calendar, that they have appointments and tasks and things they need to create each day. So one may be better for you than another. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just do what feels the most comfortable and what you think is going to make you the most successful. So in order to create this campaign, this workflow campaign, I'm going to hover over the Infusionsoft logo up in the top left. And under marketing, I'm going to go to campaign builder. Now I'm going to create a brand new campaign for this. So I'll click on this green create campaign button up in the top right. And I'm going to call this a tasks campaign. Now that's just a generic name. You can name it anything you want, and I hope you name it something something pertinent to whatever you're creating. But I'll go ahead and hit save for now since it's just a test. And the first thing we're going to do is create an internal form. So I'll grab an internal form here and I'll put it on the canvas just by clicking and dragging. And I'm going to call this intake form. So this could easily be somebody coming into your business, somebody interested. This is, I like to use the example of I own a gym, and somebody was walked in and is interested in signing up for a membership. So that's what this form is about. That somebody's at the front desk, myself or another trainer or a receptionist, but somebody is there to collect the information. And so now we need to figure out which information we would like to, what pieces of information we would like to collect. So I'll go ahead and double click on that. And that opens the form builder. And now I get to build this form that's only going to be visible to Infusionsoft users. That's the benefit of internal forms, is that they don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be marketed or branded or anything like that. This is for internal people. It's only visible to users of Infusionsoft, so we can be really specific. We can use internal jargon and things like that really help us do our job better. So we see this format ribbon up in the top. It's pretty familiar. If you've ever typed anything up on a computer, whether it's in an email, in a Word document, we're familiar with this editing ribbon. What we really want to focus on is the field snippets to the far right. This is where we can actually pull information in and decide which fields we would like to collect for these people that we're going to talk to. So we have first name and email, and I actually want their last name as well. So if I hover over the first name field and I click on the wrench, I actually get more options. This name field contains a lot of other options that I can turn on. And all I need to do is just click the box next to last name, hit save, and now I'm collecting first and last name, and they both get attributed to the same contact. Email's good. I would love to have their email address. I would also like their phone number. And you'll notice that when I hover over this phone snippet icon, a dotted line appears between last name and email. What this is this allows me to just click that little phone icon, and it automatically inserts it below the last snippet or piece that I had edited in the builder. This is particularly helpful when your forms are a little bit longer, to prevent you from having to drag and drop everything around. I only need to collect one phone, and phone 1 is kind of an internal field. That's what we call it inside of Infusionsoft. We can actually hold 5 different phone numbers. This is the first of those. This is what we would call your default phone number, or they're most likely going to be their mobile phone. So I can delete that one, or I can leave it. Because it's internal, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and leave it. And I want to require it because this is something that I want to be able to talk to this customer should they have any questions, or should I have any questions as a business owner, or for follow-up purposes. I can also collect information that Infusionsoft isn't built to hold out of the box. Infusionsoft isn't a gym software, and so we don't have things like fitness goals, current weight, goal weight, what do you want to focus on, things like that. So we can actually create those. So if I grab this other snippet and I drag it just below the email, I get all of the kind of less common fields as well as custom fields that I've created in this drop-down box. And I can select any one of those. But if I scroll way down to the bottom, I get this option that's called Create a Custom Field, which allows me to create a new field that doesn't exist yet on the fly. I can create that field right here in the campaign. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on Create a Custom Field, and we're going to call this, we'll collect their goal weight. And the type determines what kind of input this field will accept. And there's lots of different types. So text pretty much will accept anything, letters, numbers, punctuation, but it's not meant to hold a ton of information, just a handful of words. If I want a kind of a paragraph or essay type question or answer, then I can select text area, and it gives me a larger area to work with that can hold a lot more text. Since this is a weight comes in numbers, I can pick a whole number, or I can say, okay, you need to commit to a weight. It's going to be, 150 pounds or 250 pounds. And this will only accept numbers, meaning that you're not going to be able to put the LBS in there, or they're not going to be able to type it out. It has to accept a number, and it will format it as a number as well once it's inside of Infusionsoft. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save This Field. I'm going to require this as well. We'll go ahead and hit Save. And then we'll go ahead and create one more the same way. We'll drag an other snippet in here. Or I can just click on Other because I have the dotted line below the goal weight, and it automatically inserts that field. Now I think I already have a field here called Fitness Goals. So I'm going to grab that, and we'll insert fitness goals in here. Now this is a larger field. This is a text area. So this could be free form notes, it could be bulleted, it could be copy and pasted from an email. This allows me to fit a lot more information into this field. Now what you'll notice about an internal form is that there's no submit button. There's nothing for us to click because this is being pulled up inside of Infusionsoft, and I'll show you what that looks like once we have this form completed. We also have the option to the left of this just to click on the snippets, and we have some familiar tools if you've ever built a form or email inside of Infusionsoft, but we have less of them, mainly because this isn't meant for customers to see. This is internal. I don't have to sell anybody on anything, but I can use these titles and paragraphs to give instructions. So this is, can be the form title. I'll make sure these extra letters aren't capitalized. And then below the title, I can have instructions on who needs to fill this out or why, what they need to do specifically. So this becomes a training piece as well. To make sure that the process that you're creating, or to create some type of consistency, we can do that with these instructions to make sure that everyone's on the same page, that everyone's collecting the information the same way. You can even have an example script if you need words, specific verbiage to be said on a call or in an interview, whether it's face-to-face or over the phone. So there's a lot of handy things that you can do with the internal forms because they're not customer facing. Because it's meant for employees, we can give instructions, we can tell them what to do, what not to do, and this prevents you from having to sit next to people and make sure that they get it right each time. And it also helps you 6 months down the road, a year down the road, when you pull up this form and you're thinking to yourself, why did I even make this? The form title and instructions, and even automation that happens when this form is submitted. Okay, say this form when submitted sends out an email, applies a tag, and starts a campaign. It lets you know and whoever else is submitting it what's about to happen when they hit submit. So just some examples for you there. But this form is good. I don't need to collect anything else. I could keep adding fields. There's no limit to how many fields I could add. It could be a fairly long form or it could be super short. But I'm gonna go ahead and mark this from draft to ready up here in the top right. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the tasks campaign option up here in the top left to go back to the campaign level. So now that we have this form created, now we need to have something happen after it. So this is our action. Now we need a reaction to it. So once we hit submit, what do we want to happen? Well, those actions, or excuse me, reactions happen inside of a sequence. So we'll drag a sequence onto the canvas and we'll double click right in the center of that. And the first thing we typically want to do is tag them somehow. We want to identify them. They're filling out this form for a reason, or they've come in and we've decided this form needs to be filled out for a specific purpose. Whether it's an intake form, a lead capture, what have you. So I'll go ahead and we'll put a tag next to it, and I think I have a gym walk-in tag. So we'll just apply a tag, and you can apply multiple tags if you like, but make sure that it's going to be relevant to what we're looking, to this process. Maybe we will send an email, and this could be a thank you email to the customer. And then we want to create a task to follow up. And this is where the workflow piece really comes in. But let's think about this for a second. So we've created, so in my gym scenario, somebody's come in, they're sitting down, they're talking with a trainer or myself or a receptionist. As soon as that person hits submit on that form, a tag is going to be applied, an email is going to be fired off, and a task is going to be created. Now, more than likely, they're still sitting in front of me. So this tag is totally fine. No one's going to see that tag but me or people inside of Infusionsoft. But this email needs to hold off a little bit. I don't want them to receive that thank you for coming in email when they're still in my gym. So if I select these two pieces, and I'll just scoot them over here, and then I'm going to select and click right on this arrow that connects the two and hit delete on my keyboard, and the line goes away. Now what I can do is I can put a delay timer in here, and I can say I actually want to wait a little bit before this email goes off. I don't need to send them a thank you email right away because they're probably still in the gym. So double click into this timer, set it for whatever you think is reasonable. It could be later that day, so maybe wait a few hours, wait 4 hours and run it on any day between my business hours. So maybe I'm open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we'll hit save, and now this will wait 4 hours and then fire it off only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. So only when I'm really operating business. So it feels like someone sat down and wrote that email. Then the email goes out, and I'm not going to go in and configure this. There's different webinars that will focus on building emails. This is not one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and just skip this and move right to the task. So this is going to be a follow-up call. So what we want to do is we want to call this customer or this prospect in a few days in case they haven't joined my gym. So we want to follow up with them. So I'll double click into this and we'll see what our options are here. The type simply indicates what kind of task is about to be created. This doesn't affect how the task is created or how it behaves inside of the system. This is really just an indicator to whoever's going to be completing the task of what that task is going to be. So we'll call it a phone call. And we're going to give it a title of Follow Up on Gym Visit. And then in the body, this is where we give specific instructions on what we want to follow up on. So I'll say specific instructions. And Anything we need to ask or do or collect, we'll do it here. And so everybody that passes through here, everybody that has that internal form filled out for them, will get this task. They're going to get a carbon copy of it, meaning that this task is going to look the same for everybody because they've all come in for the same reason. We're filling that internal form out for one reason, which is because they came into the gym and were interested in a tour or signing up for a webinar. Or not a webinar, I'm sorry, signing up for a membership. So now we have a couple other options. We can assign it to a contact's owner. If you deal with a sales team and people are assigned leads, we can assign it to the owner that's already in charge of that lead. So that way the person who is assigned that prospect also gets assigned these tasks. This is optional. You don't have to do this. If you don't work with owners, then we can just use this backup option and we can assign it to one person every time. So I'll assign it to myself. Then we get to pick when this task is due. So we'll probably give them a couple days to think about it. So what happens is this task gets created as soon as that email goes out. But the due date is set 2 days in the future. So the tasks can be created immediately, but won't show up on your to-do list until this many days rolls around. So in this case, 2 days from now is when this task will be due. The due at time has to be selected. So all the tasks are going to show up due at this same time. The way it prioritizes on your calendar is going to be fine. Don't worry about that. All of them stacking up at 8 a.m. But pick. I usually like to pick either something at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, just because either I'm catching up or that's my phone call time is at the beginning, or at the end of the day when I know things are off my plate, I can get to these tasks. Priority just determines how important this task is. So if it's critical, meaning this has to happen before progress can continue, then mark it as critical. This is really essential or non-essential. We'll just keep it as essential for now. We can also notify the owner that a task has been created. Or you can notify other users if other people need to know that this task has been created as well. So we can also notify people who aren't assigned as the owner of this task. The pop-up reminders, I would be very judicious about when these pop-up reminders are used. They are handy, but I like to tell my customers to use it as a kind of a reactionary tactic, meaning that if you see that somebody is not completing tasks, that they're going through the motions but they're just not marking it as done, then come here and institute the pop-up reminders. This will create a pop-up reminder for every task created in this campaign. So every time somebody passes through this piece, a pop-up reminder is going to be created. And they can be overwhelming if you have a lot of people pouring through this campaign. But if it's just one or two, or if it's super critical that it get done, then the pop-up reminder might not be a bad idea. But I always say hold off on this. Let's see how, if the tasks are being completed in the way and the time that they're supposed to be completed in, and if they are, leave it, no problem. If they're not, then we can come back here, adjust the pop-up reminders, and republish the campaign. So I'm going to leave them off for now. And I've got some instructions. I've got the due date and time. Priority is set, as well as an owner. It has to be assigned to somebody, and that's where this backup, this one has to be filled out. So in the top right, I'll go ahead and change this from draft to ready. And I'll go back to the sequence. And this is done. I don't need to do anything else. This is a fairly common process where a form is filled out, something is collected, and then sometime later we send a follow-up, a thank you email, and we want to follow up at a certain point. So one thing I know I didn't do is rename this sequence. And that's a habit we always want to get into because untitled sequence doesn't tell me as a user what is actually happening in there. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and double click in the untitled sequence on the text there. And we'll call this thank you email and follow-up task. And I'll make this 2 lines here. All right. So, and this sequence is not marked as ready as well. But in order to test it out, in order to kind of show you what is actually going to happen, we need to cheat a little bit. So, a good way to test this out is to actually avoid this timer because this webinar isn't 4 hours long and we're not going to be able to see that task being created. Here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to disconnect this line here and the line that connects the task to the email. And I'm going to shift everything down a little bit because I want all the important things to happen immediately. So this is just for testing purposes, but this will give you a good idea of what this process looks like. So we'll mark the sequence as ready. So all of this stuff is going to happen as soon as that form is filled out. There's no timers or anything that would delay it from happening. And we'll go ahead and click on Back to Tasks campaign. Everything looks good. Everything is green. I can go ahead and hit Publish. I'll get my little pre-flight checklist here that will tell me something's not marked as ready, which is that email that we didn't configure. And some campaign elements are not connected, which is because we disconnected some things to kind of push our testing forward a little bit faster. So these yellow exclamation points are not preventing you from publishing this campaign. This is just things that may need your attention, but aren't necessarily going to cripple your campaign. For instance, these 2 things, I know exactly what we're talking about. I know what they're referring to, and I know it's not going to affect my campaign. So I can go ahead and hit Publish. Now, we have this intake form. Well, how do we fill this out? Say somebody comes into my gym, how do I get their information into that form? This isn't customer facing. There's no link option that I can go to a specific URL. I have to fill it out inside of Infusionsoft. So here's what we can do. I'll go ahead and click on the campaigns option up here in the top left, and we'll actually leave the campaign builder. Now we can get to these internal forms a couple different ways. The first one is hovering over the logo in the top left, and under CRM we can go to Contacts. And once there, I'll hover over Contacts once more, and I'm going to select Add a Contact. Now, it asks us which form do we want to fill out. This is our list of internal forms. These are all the internal forms we've ever created. Now, if you've imported campaigns from our campaign marketplace, like I have about 1 million times, you may have a lot of forms that look very similar. And so this is why it's always good to get in the habit of renaming things as soon as we create them, because it can cause confusion like this. But I have my intake form here that I've created. And as soon as I select that, it reloads the page with the form that we just created inside that campaign. So we have our form title, some instructions here, any example script, automation that potentially may happen when I submit this, and then I have all my fields. So I can fill this out. Let me fill this out real quick here. This is test@test.com. And you always have to indicate that you have permission to email these people. This is, they're coming in, this is, that conversation can sound like, hey, would you like me to send you some follow-up material? And the customer says, sure, absolutely. That's this conversation. That's you getting permission. Let's say my goal weight is 250 pounds and my fitness goals are A, B, and C, whatever that is. So now we can have this history of, hey, remember when you came in initially and you wanted to do these things, you wanted to accomplish A, B, and C? Well, you've done that, so let's create some new goals. So you kind of create a personalized experience just by collecting this information at the very beginning. And then when you hit save, it will create that contact, and it will take you right to that contact record where you can add tags, you can write an email. But what we've done just by submitting that form is we've also started a campaign. Now down here, if we scroll down a bit, we have a campaigns tab in this bottom half of the contact record. I can click on campaigns, and recent campaign history shows me that I filled out that intake form, it applied the tag, and should have created that task as well. Now that task is going to live here on this very first tab. Now you can see that it's not showing up here yet, mainly because it just happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and refresh my screen. And here is that task now. But it's not due until the 9th. So I have some time before I actually have to complete this task, which is totally fine. But how do I know that this task is due on the 9th? You know, how do I use Infusionsoft as a good reminder tool to make sure that on the 9th I actually do this task? That's where we get into the dashboard widget and My Day. Those will notify you of things that are either due today or past due. And I like My Day because it shows you things that are happening in the future as well. So if I hover over the home icon here, I'll go ahead and click on My Day. And you'll see that all I have is an overdue task, mainly because My Day only shows a few certain categories of tasks. It's past due or overdue, today, tomorrow, and someday. So things that are due today are going to show up under a little arrow that says today, and tomorrow as well. So I can start either planning for my day tomorrow, or I can start to get ahead and I can start to accomplish tasks that are due tomorrow. And then someday tasks don't have a due date. They are simply created inside of My Day. So if I click on this add button for tasks, I can give it a title such as pick up dry cleaning. It's not assigned, it's not attached to a specific owner or a specific contact. This is for me. We'll say due, we won't even give it a due date because someday tasks don't have a due date. This is just something that I need to do. This is really all I need. If I hit save, a task gets created here on the left-hand side for someday. This is typically reminders to myself. Things that don't have to do with a contact, but I need to remember for one reason or another. If I don't see tasks here, like for instance the one we just created, up here at the top in the middle, I can click on all tasks, and it gives me access to all of the tasks that I've created. And this date range option allows us to select or filter out which task we would like to see. So let's take a look at future tasks. And here we see that follow-up on gym visit task is here. If I click on the title, it brings up a window where I can make changes or make notes, or I can enter in a completion date which marks this task as complete. I can also change the action date or the due date, which means I can either scoot it forward or scoot it backwards. So if I talk to this customer and they're not quite ready to commit yet, or it's a bad time and they want me to call back tomorrow, I can do that. I can set the date for another day. Even today, as I can do that. So we'll scroll down and make it for 2:30 today. We'll go ahead and hit save, and it no longer appears as a future task, but I can go back to the main My Day screen, and now I have this follow-up on gym visit today. This little yellow flag indicates that it's not critical, but it's not it's not something to be ignored. It's essential is what it is. If I click on the task name, it pulls up the specific instructions or any notes that have been created for that task. It pulls up the contact information, and this ribbon here, this paper and checkbox and calendar and everything that goes across gives me access to pretty much everything on the contact record. I could literally just work off of this screen all day. If I have all my tasks and everything created, if this is something where I work, with appointments all day long, this is a great hub for me to go to and make sure that all my work has been completed. Once I've talked with them, I can simply click the box next to the task name. The box gets checked, the task gets struck out, and the next time I come to my day, that task won't even be on the list because it's been completed. And then I can focus on other tasks like this overdue one or other things that may pop up. So this is why I really like My Day. This is if you work with a lot of tasks or appointments or are just calendar oriented, this is a great thing. I'm going to go ahead and edit this real quick. Actually, let's create a new task here because I would like to show you what it looks like on the dashboard. So we'll make the due date today, and we'll assign it to Mike Harris. All right, so we have a new task here today. So I'll hover over the home icon again. We'll go to my dashboard. And that tasks widget that we added earlier now has an additional task. So we had our old one that's way past due. It's April of this year. And we have our new one that's due today. Now, if I click on the task description under this column, it brings up that extra pop-up box. So if you have a pop-up blocker, you may want to turn that off for Infusionsoft. But it gives me the same access to those notes, to the completion date, and I can also click on the contact name here. If I know that this is done, I can simply check the box on the ones that I've completed and hit the complete button here. And those get marked as completed and today's date inserted into the completion date. So that is how you complete or at least kind of manage your tasks from the dashboard. I wanted to push the Help Center one more time, help.infusionsoft.com. If you have any questions, there's definitely a lot of answers there, a lot of great help, and even old versions of webinars that you can go back and watch if you are not able to attend live versions like this one. So if you have any need of assistance, you can find it there, whether it's contact our tech support, whether it's finding something, an article in our user guide, or access to a video, it's all going to be there. Again, my name is Mike Harris. I'm a software expert here at Infusionsoft, and thanks for watching.